Hello everyone. Today is Halloween. And today I want to share something with you that I have not shared with anyone before. Some of you might know, some of you might not know, that I am in fact a fan of creepypastas. I am subscribed to people like Mr. Nightmare or Storytime with Leon. But I have my own stories. Stories that I have never told because no one would ever believe them. Stories that would make the hackles on the back of your head stand up. And the thing is, guys, I swear on my mother's grave that each and every bit that I'm about to tell you is true. You must imagine I am an atheist. I do not believe in God, an afterlife, or anything of the sorts. The paranormal? Maybe. So, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, my parents divorced, and my father won child custody, meaning that I moved in with my father and my grandparents. After a while, I got my own room, and about a half year later, what I'm about to tell you happened. The room that I got was an old guest bedroom. I didn't have my own bed, you might say. I had one of the guest beds that I could use. And that bed was very small, because it was very old. An old wooden bed which you might expect to find in an old farmhouse or something. Only about 160 long and a little bit over a meter in width. So I went to sleep. As I said, I was about 11 or 12 years old, so I was still small enough I could stretch out in that bed, no problem. But you couldn't the head part of the bed, move it up and down. You couldn't do that. So some of you might have heard of sleep paralysis. It's when you wake up, feel completely awake, but you can't move. Crazy shit happens when you're in sleep paralysis. But at that time in my life, I had never heard that term before. So I was sleeping, and from one moment to another, I was wide awake. Really wide awake. I couldn't move, however. I could feel, though. And what I could feel was that, first of all, the bed that I had this... and the top half and the bottom half, the legs where it stand on went a little higher, and there was a board between that. So when I lay in there, I sometimes hit my head on the upper board. I couldn't feel that. What I felt instead that the upper part of the bed was slightly raised, in those therapeutic beds where you can raise the upper part to sit in the bed. And that the texture of the bed, the mattress, was rippled. And I felt that I was bigger than the me that had gone to sleep. The really unnerving part was that I couldn't move. Now, I lay in that bed for about 5 minutes. That's how it felt, however. And I can't be sure of an actual time span. What happened was that I suddenly started hearing footsteps. Footsteps as if someone was trying to be silent, to be as quiet as possible. And I wanted to spring up and, either defend myself or run. But I couldn't move. And my eyes were closed. Suddenly, I hear the pop of my door. Because you must imagine there's always a bit of tension between the door frame of my door and the actual door. I don't know why, but that's why it always makes a little pop sound when you open the door. And I hear someone coming in. I don't have one of those creaky doors, so don't think that my door was like creaking like crazy, like in those scary Creepypasta stories. No, it was not. It was just a slight pop. And I hear that someone coming in and stand next to my bed. And I hear them breathing. Just a low breathing sound. At that point I was ready to piss myself. And then I remember that as vividly as it had happened yesterday. As if it had happened yesterday. Even though I admit that a few details of this story I got them somewhere else, because I will explain that in a minute. And suddenly I feel something ice cold on my temple. And a low voice says to me, "I told you I'd get you." And then there was a bang, and the next moment I knew the next thing I knew was I was practically standing upright in my bed and screaming like a lunatic with a splitting headache. And there was no one there. I mean, my father and my grandparents, they came running, but yeah. And now I will explain to you where I got all these details, like the texture of the mattress and everything. After I had calmed down a little bit back then, I took one of my notebooks, because I used and still have these little notebooks where you can write stuff down in. And I wrote everything that I remembered down. Everything. And just recently, while cleaning up, I found that notebook again. And why I'm scared out of my wits because of this is, if you take the description of the bed that I lay in that night and compare it with the bed that I have nowadays, you will find an almost perfect match. And that is the reason why I am, as of late, locking all doors at night, including my bedroom door. Including my bedroom door. This was, however, only one occurrence that happened to me. I don't know how to say this. It's been a few years since then. It was in 2004 when my grandmother died. About, I think, a month later, we had buried her, and life in the house was just starting to get normal again. One night, I lay in my bed, and because my grandfather's bedroom by that time had been moved one floor down, he had his bedroom directly under mine, which means that whenever I was listening to music or something, he would hear it and feel disturbed and like takes the breaker out so I wouldn't have electricity up there. So what I did was I wore headphones while watching a movie. To be precise, I was watching the Pokemon movie with this shape-shifting legendary Pokemon that kisses Ash at the end. I don't know which one it was. Don't know which number of movies and what the title was, but that movie where they're in this Venice-like city. And I'm just laying there on my side, having my monitor there on my nightstand, and watching that movie. Because I like anime and stuff. And suddenly, I hear someone calling my grandfather's name. Which also so happens to be my second first name. Because I have 3. So I jump up. First of all, it was a female voice. I jump up, toss my headphones into the corner, and run into the hallway. And I see that there's light on in the hallway, and it was like, I don't know, 1 or 2 a.m. And my grandfather usually went to bed at around 9 p.m. 9 p.m. So it couldn't have been him who like switched the light on. So he comes out of his bedroom into the hallway, just wearing his undies, and looks at me, and his face was chalk white. His face was chalk white. And he looks up at me and says, "Please tell me you just called me." And in such a little voice that my grandfather was a very, very strong person, and he barely ever showed weakness. But in this moment, he looked up at me, and in this pleading little voice, "Please tell me you just called me." It was... I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And that's still not all that has happened to me, but this will be all for today. And as I said, I swear on my mother's grave that this is all true. Have a happy Halloween, everyone, and let me know if you would like to hear more of my personal experiences.